Hello, my imaginary friends. Today, as usual, Dutch and Maptuk are with you. Oh go. Go. Write in the chat, as far as our voice can be heard in the same way. Identical. Ugh, fuck. Is the sound equally aligned? Is the music too loud in volume? And so on and so forth. And we, as always, according to tradition, will begin to read out the donations that came between streams. So, Sergey, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, is it possible to block the effect of insectoid information on a person with the phrase, "I don't play other people's games by shitty rules"? I doubt it very much. Of course, you can try, but most likely it won't help, because social spells sound a little different. You can go, for example, to a friend Guzhev's website and see his article about social spells. He has a good selection. The nuance here is that these social spells in general will not help from this, because this is no longer witchcraft, but this is exactly beyond the boundaries of humanity. That is, what magism witchcraft implies is beyond human, that is, everything is very subtle there in general. That is, in terms of meaning, something like this may be suitable, but it is you who need to make just such a strong-willed effort. But it's not like it's a panacea. That is, in the fall, they are also so smartassed and know how to get around all this. But, as some initial such impulse is volitional, why not? That is, in terms of meaning, it is about the way it is. That is, you need to fence yourself off from their influence on your brain. Here. But here it is not limited only to words or mental efforts. More training is needed. Mikhail, 230 rubles with commission coverage. According to iGaia, I am glad that I am in the same reality with you gentlemen magicians. Me and the fire. And in he is, 237 rubles 12 kopecks, with commission coverage. No messages. Alexander, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, getting rid of the flyers leads to the rejection of technology, because as I understand it, they gave humanity the technologies that we use now, the internet, transport, industry and so on. I apologize if this question has already been asked. It seems to me that this is like magic against technology, liberation against technological slavery. This all comes from the category of the good old two chairs, because all these technological gizmos can be used simply in a different way. Well, in the sense of with other goals, and not as it is now. But perhaps there is a situation when they will simply not be needed, because why do you need, for example, transport with the internet, if you can teleport and exchange thoughts at any distance? The topic is really serious. On the one hand, there is something like that. That is, for example, it is much more difficult to engage in magism witchcraft. In the conditions of some of these technical devices that fix cameras there, and magic does not work. But also magic doesn't work, just if someone doesn't believe in it. Well, that is, here is such a skeptical setup. That is, she is. I would say, he doesn't even believe it, but believes in its absence. Yes, to the point that there may even be such combined options. That is, people with a magical picture of the world can observe some effect, and at the same moment, people with another picture of the world, there, I don't know with what, cannot observe the same effect. Here. It's really deeper than just saying there's magic and technology. But here it is to agree with the future, that everything can be used, both technology and magic. The point here is that who, and for what purposes, spreads these or those thoughts. Here, including this thought about the same global counter between magic and technology, I also think that it is more of a wrecking. And that's exactly what these two chairs are like. But so deep in fact, as we are discussing it now, most people do not even look into such depths here. I want to know everything. 1,000 rubles with commission coverage. Gentlemen magicians, why did you change your shoes? What to expect instead of the second wave of Coronabija? The second wave of Coronabija is still worth waiting for. Do not think, as they say now, that protests have begun in America and everyone has forgotten about the coronavirus. When it is necessary, they will remember. They will say that some particularly evil stamp has been removed, has not been quarantined, or something like that. Here, in fact, the question is the transfer. When we are chronicles of the war, that is, there we will look at everything in detail. Just now here we have a slightly different topic. Although, of course, everything is interconnected, but we will answer all these questions in detail in another different stream. And in more detail. T 83,000 rubles with commission coverage. Gentlemen magicians, let me give advice to your viewers. Do not share with non-organs in a dream. It's like swearing with the TV. The correct solution in this situation is to switch the channel or interrupt the broadcast altogether. It sounds obvious if you think about it, but I tried a lot until I probably came to this conclusion. It's just that the message ends here. There were not enough signs. In general, I agree, because by and large, it is a rather meaningless activity and often labor-intensive to fight with non-organs. But it's quite possible to kick them in the horns, if you need it, but it's not worth switching to this berserk mode or playing Doom 2. And I would like to note, remembering my experience, when I had no knowledge at all about any non-organs and dreams, and remembering just the dreams that I had there as a child, as a teenager. That is, there are some nuances here, that they are all the same. In other words, it's useless to explain in words how not to pay attention to them. In other words, you need to have such a very, very balanced position, accumulate personal strength in real life, and all that, and only then will it cease to affect. And just like that, what you think, I don't want to interact with non-organs there, how to fight them with them. It's not going to work anyway. They'll grab you by something anyway. And that's when they will have nothing to grab you for. And this will only happen after practice, when you really will not have these vulnerable points that they can poke at. And you don't think that they are any kind of super smart. They just see everything a little bit from the other side, and they see your emotional vulnerabilities and see how it is there. And they will just poke at them. In other words, they don't really have any intelligence. They just have this opportunity here. In other words, this is how they understand that they have no intelligence. They work like robots. These are actually robots. And you basically just need to practice this and close all these vulnerable points. Then it won't work from them. And it's not always shorter to work with just words. Here, well, only such a rare case, if a person is already ready, as it were, and he just lacked some kind of last trigger. Well, I'll illustrate your friend Aptuk's speech with such a vital observation. You know, they like to give advice about some annoying person. They say, just don't worry, don't take it into your head and all that stuff. As a rule, these tips do not help, and in principle, they cannot help, because the vulnerability to which, well, due to which there is a reaction, is not closed. And as soon as this vulnerability is closed, then such advice will not be needed. To know, 1,116 rubles for capex with commission coverage. Gentlemen magicians, what should I do when meditating? Thinking about nothing while looking at the rune, or trying to concentrate on the runes, or is it the same thing? Concentrating on the rune, stopping the internal chatter, because thinking about nothing is a separate practice. That is, you first try to stop the internal chatter by thinking about nothing, and then during meditation, you completely concentrate your attention on the rune, including the internal chatter. The player is 230 rubles. Mr. McGee, there are questions. The first thing you think about sex and lucid dreams. I've been having lucid dreams since childhood, and I've been doing it there since childhood. Is there harm, danger? Secondly, I am often attacked by non-organs with stories about prison, then I was put there, and I am sad. I want to take revenge on them and attack prisons in a lucid dream. Do you think it makes sense? Well, I don't think anything about sex in lucid dreams. That is, You can study, you cannot study. The only danger that may be is that you will have sex with some non-organs, which in this way use one of your vulnerabilities to pump out personal power. Here's a friend, here's a serious topic. To be honest, I'm surprised that he has some kind of special energy that allows him to do this. Usually it's just some kind of sex dream, at least for men. That is, I judge from my experience. It's definitely some kind of non-organ trying to suck, and that is, it's quite dangerous. Because there are so many non-organs that are trying to specifically male sexual energy, there, to a fig and more. Here, and how would that be the most? As you know, you open it, so I brought you this very thing to eat. So, there is nothing good about this, except, as it were, the squeezing of energy does not happen. That is, maybe. Well, we are friends. The same thing, special energy. The same energy squeeze happens when a citizen jerks off to some varied porn videos, for example. Well, it seems to me that this is more dangerous. On the other hand, everything is different for everyone. Maybe this is how a person is, but he managed to masturbate in a dream, well, or spend sexual energy, without attracting any non-organs. But something here is my experience, it somehow does not correspond to this very thing. Here. So, this is a strange situation for me at all. So, then you write that you are often attacked by non-organs with stories about prison. These are most likely not organs, well, rather how to say, not organs, but of a specific kind. These are locally created programs. And taking revenge on a program is like taking revenge on Windows for the fact that it does not work well by smashing the disk, or erasing it from the hard disk. Then it's possible that this particular egregor wants to suck on you, that is. Here it is possible to attack the egregor. But attacking the egregor in one person is also a so-so ideal. Only if you already know this, you feel that you have to say it somehow. Karmically, it is necessary to attack this egregor. But, I will share my experience, it usually does not bring any benefit. That is, I have had similar ones here. I have very often, just as I have told about it more than once, that I am in Enola. This is the location of dreams, which is a school. I have attacked it many times, destroyed it. It has remained as it was. That is. This and this is all useless. That is, it is again installed, and in short, it is like a classic war with windmills. Here. So it's probably better to give up on it. So, the next question. The Chisik dog is 777 rubles with commission coverage. We Gaia gentlemen magicians have a successful stream so that the insectoids and their henchmen will not see victory. You can touch on the topic of reptiloids as a hypothesis and as a legend, if there is something real behind it from your point of view. Thank you. Well, of course there is. And you can find our stream back at Institute B, where we talked about insectoids. That's where we came up with this term. We discuss reptiloids too, because from our point of view, David sees exactly insectoids. But for some reason he calls them reptiloids, I don't know why. The theme is very rich, because the archetype of the dragon, the archetype of the snake, it is found in many cultures. Even in Orthodox Christianity, there are quite canonical images with this serpentine called, you can look at it. And Dutch, that's where I disagree with you, you probably misunderstood a little bit somehow. That is, I would not say that David takes the sectoids for a reptile. Or whatever he is. On sectoids, yes, he takes them for reptiloids. I don't even know there, that is, it's hard for me to judge, maybe. Listen to that old one and I. This is really the broadcast on Institute B. There with David Mike, everything is planted. That he sees something, that he catches something, and something is not. But here are all these nuances there, in which David is wrong. I'm also not ready to discuss now. In other words, let's leave this topic for now. And the very topic of reptiles and the human unconscious is a very rich topic. In fact, there are variations in it. It's full of all sorts of snake-like, dragon-like deities, a bunch of different cultures. And this too, of course, all did not arise from scratch. So, for now, in short, let's leave this reasoning for another time. Something is me here. Okay, I forgot. Okay, we won't just, because it will distract us very much. So let's take a 5-second break and get down to the main topic. 1 second. That's it, I'm here. So, let's move on to the main topic. And for now, well, before Obtek begins to reveal the whole truth, the uterus, I would like to make such a small remarочка and talk about zombification. What is it, and approximately what zombie technologies exist at all? Well, zombification itself, in principle, it can be defined in such a way that it is the process of turning a person into a robot, and it is not necessary for a person to lose self-awareness. This is exactly part of the technology of losing self-awareness. The result is important when a person executes a given program. That is the same order. It's just a very simple program, as a rule, consists of one item, but orders can be complex, branched, and literally be ordinary programs, because you can look, for example, at some kind of flowchart that they like to draw before you start writing directly, and you will understand that social programs are not necessarily social, are compiled according to the same principle.
Непосредственно к написанию, и вы поймете, что социальные программы и не обязательно социальные составляются по тому же принципу.
But the zombie technologies themselves, personally, I could conditionally divide into two such schools, and they quite intersect. And the details of one school are the other, and this division is quite conditional. The first is zombification, well, let's say, physiological, where the work mainly goes through the main BIOS firmware, and the main, even rather biological BIOS firmware, because the work is based on exploiting the vulnerability of various body survival programs. That is, when a character is put in such conditions that the only way for him not to die is to do what the zombifiers require of him. I don't remember. What, by the way, are these zombie modifiers called in voodoo? I don't remember either. Well, it doesn't matter in short. That is, you don't. Zombies are a product. And backer or something like that. Well, yes, something like, it doesn't matter. As an illustration, you can look at the tigers in the zoo, for example, why they sit on the bollards. They sit on the bollards so that they need to keep their balance, and their attention is more occupied with this, and not with thoughts about how they would devour the trainer. All this is especially evident, for example, in the same army, when, with the help of pizdul, lack of sleep, and other similar techniques, citizens are trying to turn into state-owned such combat zombies in 2 years. The second option is to work through a picture of the world. That is, a person creates such a picture of the world that he himself, without even losing consciousness, based on this picture of the world, will perform the programs necessary for the modifier. In other words, there is just a kind of substitution of reality, and the simplest and most common technique is working with emotions. In other words, the emotional picture of the world is replaced when certain influences cause the necessary emotional responses, and they cause the desired behavior of the patient after themselves. Here is such a small remarочка, a friend of Makliuk. Yes, I'm thinking right now, I'm going to step back a little bit for a second. I'm just going to think about it again. It's possible there or a musical pause, or there may be some questions. Here. Come on, Ba. A small musical pause, just for a minute. Stay tuned. Hello again.
Снова здравствуйте.
Well, are we friends? I'll give you a word. Yes, I was just thinking about where to start. That is, exactly how I got to this one is quite unfamiliar to a person from the outside, they say with all the subtlety. The subtleties of this are quite strange. This theory may seem strange to someone. Just to say, the main backstage of Kuklachev is there, Pugachev and all that. Well, I decided I'd better tell you first, so that you somehow have such a complete picture, maybe some kind of formed. Somewhere around the age of 6 when I was 6 years old, I was with my mother at the performance of Kuklachev, and according to my mother's memories, that is, I remember this moment, and I remember it too, that is how I acted and how all the children acted. That is, there was one of those moments when Kuklachev, as it were, called everyone, and all the children threw everything, and rushed to him. That is, I did exactly the same thing. And that's exactly what this analysis is, and why I did it like that, and in general, what actually happened on stage in that. Here. Now he's getting a little ahead of himself, not even a little, but a lot ahead of himself. I also attended Kulachev's speech, already understanding what he is and what is happening. And I watched, as if already in an adult state of consciousness, with a full understanding of what kind of character this is, and what is happening. And I can say that there is such a thing going on, that it is impossible to explain with any such ordinary logic. Here. And then who might be interested in all sorts of speeches and articles Pugachev, Kulachев count. The main thing he says there is the main idea. This is the so-called control of unconditional reflexes. That is, conditioned reflexes are exactly what the Dutch is talking about. There is no feeding and fucking there, or doing something else, but they are unconditional, that is even deeper. So, Kuklachev is exactly how we call it magic. His magic is precisely based on what he calls unconditional reflexes. So, this is the same thing. That's how it is, you can say, some kind of secret knowledge or special knowledge, which is the essence of obsession. That is, demons moving from one body to another just use these unconditional reflexes, that is, a way of controlling unconditional reflexes. Well, that is, breathing, heartbeat, sweating, that's all. Yes, yes, because if you can control it, then it's much easier for you to take control of what is called a personality already in this. So that is, as if Kulachев doesn't even hide it, he talks about it, he just says it casually, without focusing on it. By the way, when they asked him about magic, he says that there is no magic, but maybe he calls it something else. A question of terminology. You can call it a zombie technology. In other words, he understands zombie technologies very well. Moreover, I would attribute it to Kuklacheva, to a physiological modifier. He works primarily through the physical body, what you're talking about, the control of these. Through unconditional reflexes, including conditioned reflexes. He seems to know this more deeply, and you know, a person who constantly talks about some kind of school of kindness and about kindness. But at the same time, it is quite well known what he actually does with these cats. That is, he torments them there in very sophisticated ways, because, well, a lot shorter data if anyone is interested. Look there too. I'm not sure, although of course everyone on the internet could have removed it all, but believe me, that is, I also communicated with knowledgeable people, who know those who work there with Kulachев and so on. Everything is very tinny there. And plus it's so secret, that is, Kulichev does not allow anyone to see this particular training technology. In other words, it's like you can say his secret, but it's such a secret that it's the cruelest torture, let's say. And with the help of these cruel tortures, so apparently he gets, well, something that allows him to control the seals. And here the only question is that not only cats, but also Ludikov too. Because it affects children. That is, this is his main thing, as it were, this very thing. I mean, why is he doing this? In other words, it's like this is a job for the future, or he really squeezes out some kind of power due to this. This is so controversial, of course, such a question. We are friends, Aplik. There is another interesting question. All such technologies are quite complex, and I will not believe in my life that Kuklachev himself discovered and developed all this in one lifetime. Certain technological data had to get to him. Of course. And so I'm thinking, how would we go back to analyzing films now? A real detective is there, happy, and you've never been here or something like that.
К анализу фильмов вернуться настоящий детектив там Хэппи и тебя никогда здесь не было или как-то так.
The fact is that before these series appeared, it was more difficult for me to explain what it is, this technology here.
Сложнее объяснить, что же это из себя представляет, вот эта вот технология.
When these series have told everything, it's much easier for me to explain this idea of mine. And in this stream, I'm not sure that of course there is enough strength for all these subtleties. It is desirable, of course, to separate each series to explain all sorts of subtleties, but I will try to explain what I have enough strength for. I don't even know. Maybe I'll give you a brief reference on Pugacheva, because she is a representative of another school, just for working with the substitution of the emotional picture of the world. And Pugacheva, this is what we have already said just about the cult of Mitre and Tabella. Unfortunately, we were not able to fully tell, but what we have told here, it is necessary to understand just here that Pugacheva is the cult of Cybele. And what is Cybele like? In other words, this is the same Saturn. It's like it's the most feminine component, let's say. And the male component here, well, that is here, there is everything, and the subtlety, that this particular female component is this castrated man. That is, exactly this robot, the doll. And you should understand that Klachev, of course, his real name is not Kuklachev in any way. It's just that his position is Kuklachev. And his name, too, is not his name, but part of his position. That is, for example, he is exactly Yuli Dmitrievich there, or there, and his son Mitro Yulievich. And I have this theory here. I don't guarantee that it is correct, but here is some kind of suspicion that this is exactly this entity that has knowledge of how to flow from body to body using human unconditional reflexes. This is what the entity in which it may have originated even earlier than this Julius Caesar or Emperor Nero there, who is recognized as just Mitroist. Armenian magicians here thought that Nero was just another incarnation of Mithras, and most likely they were right.
Чем вот этот Юлий Цезарь или там император Нерон, который признан как раз митраистские, вот армянские маги вот считали, что Нерон это как раз воплощение Митры очередное, и скорее всего они были правы.
Here. That's what this entity is, which has been reincarnated from time to time since those ancient times, at least with Julius Caesar. Then this. Well, what should I call it? I'm not sure it can be called a mitre. I'm not sure she can be called Cybele. Here. Something like that. But nevertheless, some powerful old demon. And yet, as if this demon likes to disguise himself by what we can see here, as the cult of Mitroitabella and the imperial cult uniting them. That is, by the way, you will notice Kuklachev's face. It is very strange.
Вы, кстати, заметьте, лицо Куклачева, оно очень такое странное.
It is most similar to just look at the frescoes there of these Roman emperors, especially from the Julian dynasty. That is, he is practically the spitting image of Caligula of some kind there. That is, it's about the same. That is, Caligula, by the way, is also Julius. That is, they are like these emperors who went very far. Julius Caesar, and the rest of them are there. In my opinion, it's not this imperious branch that's on their neuron, or it's bent on Caligula. When was Caligula before? I don't remember him anymore. I don't remember either. That is, that's what these very frostbitten Roman emperors, who love to have fun most of all, here you are not looking at their faces. And look at Pugachev's exterior one-on-one. And if we recall the Happy TV series, there it's all in plain text, and it's shown that some kind of Roman deity, I forgot what his name is there in the series, Happy is called, he needs exactly physical bodies. That is, he really can't move into some ordinary body, he can only move into a certain kind of body. And there's a snag over it. And by the way, to inhabit a body of a certain kind, we recall all the other magical practices there, even village ones. Yes, in order for a witch to die or someone to die, he needs a relative so that he passes these demons to someone. And this plot is happy, it's the first season there. It's built on this weight, that the demon is trying to incarnate into the body he needs, and it's because of just this alcoholic, a former policeman, and now a killer, he can't do it. I forgot what this demon's name is, but you understand that it's not just some kind of deity, but it's really Roman. In other words, those who created this series, they saw about the same picture as I did, they just described it in their own way, and gave their name to this god. Well, or a demon, or whatever his name is, what difference does it make? There is a god, a demon. But the main thing is that this whole cult is the same in principle as in the villages. That is, just this demon. He apparently eliminated all his competitors with the help of the spread of Christianity. That is, so that there are no other genetic lines of transmission, other demons of some kind, but so that all power is concentrated in him. And of course, Kulichev is part of this global system. Here, and of course his last name is not Kuklachev, and not Yuri there, and not all that. In other words, you notice that Dmitry Yurievich, Yuri Dmitrievich, Yuri, I think it's not accidental. Well, it turns out that I give no guarantees here. It's just, well, my analytical view of this situation. Here. So it's better to ask some questions. Well, I would have noticed something else. There's an interesting moment in the Happy series. The transfer takes place along the mafia line of this ancient demon, but at the same time, he actively uses the local, I do not know how, Kuklachev. Well, Kuklachev is, because he too just likes to tell the kids all this about kindness and happiness with your performers. How they like them, these are these, with these how they are. Yes, there, three Teletubbies, but at the same time, he uses it, he does not inhabit it. He feeds him, gives him media resources, and classics through blackmail, so that he can then slap him on the air, in order to kill the hopes of all the kids. Beating the hopes of an entire generation. Yes. Our situation is somewhat different, because the demon is in Kuklachev himself. Here, this one, what's his name there? This one, who is just exactly Zelakami. What was his name there? I don't remember. Here, we have been watching this series for a long time. Sorry, we didn't prepare much. That is, as we have such powers, so we tell. Sledge Sunshine or something like it. Yes. Sledge Sunshine. That is, here he embodies the concept of Tabela rather. That is, here is what we have just exactly Pugachev. In other words, this is exactly the union of these concepts of Kulichev and Pugacheva, that is, as if Pugacheva is, I am sure, also not a real surname, of course. In other words, this is exactly fear, that is, fear. Cybele is, among other things, this is exactly the main fear. How to make a person perform a role. The main energy is fear. Here. And Kuklachev, who uses unconditional reflexes, precisely to move from generation to generation along the same ancestral line. That is, they act together. And together they form just this ancient Roman Empire, which continues to exist to this day. That is, this union of Mitro and Tibella is united by a common cult of the emperor for the profane. But in fact, this is exactly what this is. In other words, here is one ancestral line and transmission, which eliminated all competitors, and now has practically subjugated all people. Here, there it is shown, as a local Pugacheva. There, yes, by the way, even this one is shown, which is a singer, which is a wife. The wife. Yes, that is, here the sleigh is more like this Kirkorev here, and everything fills it up there like this. In other words, you can sort of find out in life, all these schemes of exactly the same control of people. They happen in Russia, in the USA, everywhere. Any country that you don't take, there it is exactly this principle of the union of the cult of Mitra and Tibella, that it exists. By the way, Pelevin wrote exactly the same thing. Here in the Emperv, only he called it vampires. That is, if this vampire language, which migrates from person to person, this is what it is. That is, he described these demons in this way. There may be more than one of them, but I have a suspicion that this one is the main one there after all. Only, of course, he can too well delegate your authority to others with some smaller weight. Here, and that's why there are enough of these small emperors there, for at least every country so large for the people. So that Levi wrote it like this, that is how these vampires rule everything by the Chaldeans and so on. Here. And the principle of their management is quite simple. It's just in the same happy more or less in a simple way that all this is shown. Control through sexual compromising material, that is, through this sex, and there it is shown up to who actually runs it. It is shown, these are the jellies that are the enectoids. In other words, these are the best, as it were, the embodiment of the concept of enectoids. Well, they are shown in their own way, as far as a person understands. Well, there, in plain text, they dress up as bugs and create a variety of obscene orgies. There, these people are close to Sunny. Remember, there's a whole series where they dress up in beetle costumes, eat some kind of smart-ass drugs which are secretions of these people, and do different things with the kids. By the way, I hope that everyone actually watched both True Detective and Happy, because who hasn't watched it? Some of our references will simply be impossible to understand. Here. And if someone didn't watch, then consider that we are so very happy with it in the spoiler, and therefore, somehow, here too. But for some reason, it seems to me that everyone should have watched the epi. True Detective Season 1. This particular control technology is shown, that is, sexual compromising material, exactly sexual. And you will notice that there is both the KGB and the CIA, that everything in general is built on this sexual compromising material. And it works. That is, it would seem to be primitive, stupid, but it has been working, and has been working, for more than 1 millennium, and maybe for more than 10 millennia. Here. Well, that is, we have said for a reason, that it is the control of the sexual sphere that is so important for these pests. Because, if there is no control of the sexual sphere, then who will have, and what to blackmail? So Ducci, come on you. Here we are friends at Uke. I'm going to ask you a very specific question now, because all three of the above-mentioned films are connected together by one theme. It is precisely a variety of rituals with children. In a real detective story, they committed sexual depravity with them for ritual purposes and killed them too, including for ritual purposes. The same thing was done in the TV series Happy, and the same thing was done in the movie You Were Never Here. And here the question is actually a little deeper than compromising material, because here it is unclear to me. The very essence of these magical rituals with children is incomprehensible. Here's a blow. Remember, I gave you a link where Kuklichev is still in this suit with apples, arguing that here are the kids, they touch each other's pipiski, and what is it that it's wildly bad, and it's somehow fucking not that it's wrong love. That is here. Do you remember this one? Well, I remember something like that, but very vaguely. It was a long time ago. I was just looking for Vito's. I couldn't find him. That is, he is very indicative. That is, here is a cat trainer talking about some children who are 4 or 3 years old there, who touch each other's pussies there, and what is it? That is, they are preoccupied with sex, and this is the wrong love. They need to be taught the right fucking love. And for about 25 minutes, like this, he fucking tells this. Well, it seems to me. That is, if there's someone there who may be skeptical somehow, but listen to this conversation, and here something can be suspected. Why is it very so for a cat trainer interested in the sexuality of children and how it is expressed? Here. In children, they have the most maximum such potential. That is why they use children. That is, they have the least protection, but they don't have this tone yet, and therefore you can practically unselect all this energy. Well, they already have a tonality, but they don't seem to have proper protection yet. By the way, there's a happy there too. We show this Santa Claus, who fucked up children, and turned them into his own kind of batteries, subordinates of some demons, by the way. Here too, everything is very well shown. That is, yes, their power is based precisely on the energy that they take away from children with the help of torture, and sexual, so to speak, including sexual torture. In other words, they have learned how to harvest this energy harvest at the expense of children. And this, in principle, is already kind of known. That is. Well, let's just say, many people are starting to talk about this. Many people are already beginning to say that the elites are connected with some kind of cannibalistic, orgistic rituals, where they use children. Here. And it is on this that the whole world power is based. In other words, these three films, they just show different views. That is how it is. Moreover, it is happy, despite his kind of sobriety and fucking. He is there as much as possible. The maximum amount of information is shown how all this happens. And in plain text, you know, without veiling, as in the same real detective story. Because in a true detective story, they began to carefully crawl away from this topic, somewhere from the middle of the season, about the fact that all the elites of the state, as it turned out, are associated with this cult. Yes, by the way, in a real detective story, it is the essence of these cults that is most well shown. There is exactly such a cult shown. You could call it. I don't even know. It would be wrong. That is, it would be wrong to call it Gnostic, but it would be inverted. That is, anti-Gnostic rather, that is, so super-demiurgic, where people understand how the universe works. And there is a lot of talk about how the universe works, that you can't jump anywhere there, everything repeats 1 in 1 1, here. And there's this main maniac, that is, he's also talking about it, and the detective who is fighting with him is also talking about it. But they seem to understand that this is fucked up, and they begin to serve this one here. And here you can call it in different ways, darkness there, light, it doesn't matter. That is here. They're starting. They begin to cooperate with the administration. Yes, they begin to serve the prince of the world of everything. That is, in principle, as if it is also logical, here. But damn, everyone has their own choice. And it shows that it is these people who have made such a choice, realizing that they are perfectly aware of what this represents to me. They understand that this is a prison, shit. He's trying to get settled, as they say, in the most comfortable way possible. Yes. By the way, the Templars were actually accused of about the same thing. Yes, yes, if you believe on especially. Yes, yes, he says in the same way that the Templars, yes, they understand that it is this world that is arranged by the evil Demiurge. They made the choice to serve him. Here, to get a good job. Here, well, this, by the way, is in direct text, and in classical Christianity, everything says there, that when the devil kidnaps Jesus, he shows him there, here are all the kingdoms of the world for you. I can give them to you, only you, as it were. Recognize me as the main one. You'll get everything. Here. And how can he give, if this is the most? If, by the way, in this and that in Christianity, that in Judaism, this is exactly what Satan is called. He is this world, and created people, too, for the most part. It is he who, as it were, created it. In other words, this is, well, the logic in this behavior, let's say, is some kind of. Now we are not going to sort this out again. There are a lot of nuances there, and we, as the Gigoi movement, have our own general view of this problem. We just won't mention it now, because we are now talking about exactly the mythology that these Pugachist adhere to, that is, as it were, our opponents, who precisely submitted to this prince of this world. It is here that their rituals are built on this, on the torment of children and their devouring. Most likely it is there that 100% of cannibalism is also present, that is, rape is also there. These are all present. Here. Then an interesting question arises. If they started making such films, it means that there is some kind of rearrangement at the very top. And it is these cultists that some other cultists are trying to sit down with. And the question is, what kind of other cultists are these? Look, the movie You've Never Been Here. There's just this Haken, the phoenix that's here. And there is also some kind of film where they specifically show how these hi-hi are in this computer game. As they are called here, they're these connections. No, these. Scientologists. Scientologists here. Here. There is just a movie with this too, with Haken Phoenix, where exactly it is not shown. Well, just about the creator of Scientology movie. Yes, about the creator of Scientology. Also, You've Never Been Here, and this is the last one with jokers. Of course, this is not accidental. That is, most likely it was Scientologists who were able to squeeze out some of this influence from these classic ones like these. I don't even know what to call them. I think it would be correct to call them evil Gnostics from our point of view. That is. Or is it fucking wrong to say evil here too? Well, let them be evil. Fallen Gnostics. Yes, that is, they know how everything is, but instead of using this information for their liberation, and the liberation of their environment, on the contrary, they use this information to enslave others, and in fact they enslave themselves even more. They have no happiness. In other words, they suffer even more in fact, and will suffer, because that's how fucking simple this system is. That is, they think that they will get more of some kind of buns for themselves, but nothing like that. On the contrary, they will get even more pussy for themselves. Here, and by the way, it's not a pity, they chose their own share. I can't say anything particularly good about Scientologists either, but it's just that apparently it's one mafia, that's a little bit of another. But it's clear that Scientologists are a little better there than these Loignostics. Just because they are younger. Also then after a while, if they manage to squeeze out the furrows of government, they will jump into the same shit. Yes, because this religion is so young. And now they have already slipped just into the loot. In other words, this is just such a first sign. That is, when they have already slipped into a complete collection of money. That is, the main thing is no longer some spiritual practices, but most importantly, money. Then very quickly they degrade to the point that these evil Gnostics have degraded. They will also start fucking children, well, just like that. Or maybe already. And maybe already, yes. But the main thing is what's the matter? In this control system that we describe. That is, when we were talking, you had to imagine just this picture of the world, which is shown in a real detective story, which is shown in Happy, how to put it together and combine it with what we are telling about Pugacheva and Pugacheva. By the way, we note that this Madonna here, she definitely holds about the same position as Pugacheva here. That's why they call themselves Madonna, prima donna. Madonna is just this title of the Virgin of Tibello. That is actually, in fact, this title belongs to Gaia, but that's how the title, and how it would be now she is the mother of gods and people. That is, this is what is meant, that is, as if in fact, it is actually Gaia the mother of gods and people, but Cybele is not. This is exactly this physical entity that, well, they are friends with Aptuk as usual. Everything is based on lies, because all the after effects of these Shalamuri practices, and these are the after effects of the Shalamuri practices, are based solely on a multi-layered lie, like the Masons. When one level is told one thing, for the next they say everything. Forget what you were told. In fact, everything is different. So, all these 100 to 500 degrees, until a person reaches the point that he no longer believes anything at all, does not believe himself. And then he is completely galamized. And by the way, not only Masons. In other words, you can have this so-called Christian church, they act in the same way. That is, in reality, they do not serve Jesus Christ in any way, but do not serve the prince of this world, in the same way as all the others here. And even this is not really even hidden. That is how it can be understood. And so it is. They have already become servants not of Jesus Christ, but of the prince of the world of forces. Moreover, this did not happen now, it happened at the first of this Zelensky cathedral of theirs. When they smashed the Arian heresy and other Gnostics, by the way. Well there. Yes. We are not going to go into this again now. It's already more or less clear. So, maybe we'll take another break. Yes, let's take a break to read the donations. Or did you want to move away? Yes, I wanted to move away. Let's take a minute break then. Stay tuned. Hello again. Well, come on. Maybe we're friends, Aptuk. We'll read out the donations. Let's take a short break from the narration, as it were. What is it? Something to add? I wanted to add something. Now, if anyone has read the story of this Philip K. Dick, the man in the high castle. Now, by the way, there is a series. Here are about the same technologies that are actually used, very similar at least by Kulichev. That's when I was already at his conscious adult age. In other words, he probably communicates, including with some such parallel dimensions, with the help of some such frame. That is, he uses this video frame. That is, he meditates on this particular technology that appeared with cinema. We recall our film strips. Yes, that is, that some pictures are shown. That's exactly what he sticks into these pictures, and shifts his assemblage point with them. Here, and it shifts it into certain probabilities, and thus controls exactly what it can control. That is. Moreover, why he does this, perhaps his physical body does not even know. In other words, there is generally such a question here, but is Kulichev really, does he fully control this process? As we can see in the same series Happy, where this demon needs it, he can turn off memory and perception there. So the physical carrier may not even know everything and all the subtleties of rituals, but here I am. For me it was just such a sign that he is more or less aware of everything. That is, it is he who consciously carries this. In other words, he bears responsibility for these events too, because he does it more or less consciously. Here, so he is for the fact that he is, as it were, in unconsciousness, in ignorance, and this will not work any shorter. When we judge Kulichev, no matter how it will not work for him, such excuses. Here. Well, let's ask questions, yes. Perrin von Karstenberg, 209 rubles 26 kopecks, Mr. and Magicians. Why behind the scenes, actively fights social Darwinism, promoting egalitarian ideologies. Is social Darwinism destructive for the insectoids because there is no place for elitism in the anthill? Will a society based on social Darwinian ideas be the best for people? Everything very much depends on what you mean by social Darwinism, because most people mean by it a simple slogan, will die today, and I will die tomorrow. And it is precisely such ideologies, but one of them promotes just modern society, let's call it that. And here's a nuance. When you tell us something like this, then you always try to ask your question in your own words. In other words, replace social Darwinism with a couple of phrases as you understand it, because maybe we understand it differently, and those who listen perceive it in a different way. Here, and accordingly, the opposition to one idea there is social Darwinism, that is, they also perceive it differently. This is exactly such a mistake. It is for this that they are trying to fuck up the clearing, so that we communicate with terms that are already fucked up by these hostile discoursemongers. And in Russia, the main ones are these Zesiratelli, it's just exactly Kurgenia and Arcs. And the best and dialogues for human society will be the Goy-Gay movement. Player, 230 rubles. Sex usually happens like this. In a lucid dream, excitement appears. I approach the Virgo I like and offer, usually they agree. Or it happens when visiting some location, some character, a woman who helped me there, offers sex. Or just some entity meets on the street and offers, so there is harm. There is harm from everything. You're just wasting your power on succubi. And you're actually feeding them. The more you feed them, the more they will appear around you. Plus, they will affect your energy body, so that it continues to feed them. Here, and as if it didn't realize it, try, it seems to me, to abandon this practice. That is, most likely something not very good is happening here. Rhodian skulls, 230 rubles, with commission coverage, to support the Go and Gai movement. Gai Goi. By the way, here we are friends with a small pharmacy. What kind of motorcycle racers are you chasing under your windows? Well, that's it, yes. I didn't hear what you said before. The muffler was pierced with a nail to make the engine sound more powerful. A small digression from the topic. Thanks, by the way, to a collective intention, precisely because the money was collected by the whole world for the counter, and then, we also enchanted it properly when buying and assembling it. Ugugug. As you may have noticed, there are almost no failures. Once again, ugugug. So, all donations are over. We can continue the topic, or read out questions from the chat, because there are questions on the topic here. Come on, let's ask questions from the chat. Here's what I want to say, maybe I'm wondering really, if there will be questions on the topic. If they are not there, my daughter will come up with them and ask them on the topic, because the topic is very complex. That is, in fact, we are trying to combine at least 3 or 4 streams in this stream, because each of these series is worthy of a separate analysis. And this topic has also been analyzed several times, but we have to put everything together faster, because, well, how much power? This is the most. It is necessary to move on to other topics, but it is impossible to move on to other topics in even more detail without highlighting these topics. Well, here's a question a little off topic, but quite indicative. Gentlemen magicians, a woman at work, a career woman, is this also a zombie program in society? Thanks for the answer. A woman at work and a career woman is just a woman at work and a career woman. And here's what she has, what's in her head, what motivates her to do this, and needs to be considered. Because it can be both a zombie program and her conscious choice, she just, for example, likes to work or build a career. That is, it is clear that most often, this is an implemented program, because right now they are doing it intensively, but not necessarily. Yeah, here I see that the case has been written, yes, it really should be. That is, in happy, this demon here, which migrates, is called exactly like that. Note quite to yourself in this Roman style. Allah Latin, Orcus. Well, it's unlikely, of course, they blabbed their real name, although it may be. Yes. No, I just think that's exactly what it is, that this is not a real name, and they are just the way that suits us the most. That is, I would not have known that it was not Mitroi Nebel, or even Saropis. That is, most likely his real name is known only by his super-consecrated priests there here. By the way, I think so, maybe even Kulichev, I don't know, Pugachevo, what's really going on there? In other words, they are somehow controlled by its branches. So to say. Well, not organs, also such a collective mind. This is a classic collective pose. Gentlemen magicians, what if not the organs just carry out selection, a kind of inorganic controlled selection of breeding optimal biological bodies for settlement? Well, what does simple mean? They spend it quite difficult, long and systematically. Whole tricky-ass technologies have been developed. All this one here. Do you think the whole modern discourse about interracial interbreeding just took off like that? Do they conduct breeding? Of course. Yes, of course they are. And we will still be watching all this fucked up. That is, they will output ideal carriers for themselves. Perfect carriers. In other words, this is exactly what this whole genetic map of people is needed for. Moreover, it will be more likely not a person, but a cyborg, that is, a person combined with a technological device, that will be an ideal carrier for these androids. But what we are talking about is that this is an event that probably seems to be in the future. Then it will not be a triumph of human civilization.
то это не будет триумфом человеческой цивилизации.
That is,
То есть как
just the
раз
person will
человек
no longer be
уже
there,
не
unfortunately.
будет.
It will be a
Это будет
triumph of the
триумфом
intellectoid
именно
civilization,
цивилизации.
because they have made
Потому что
ideal
те
carriers
сделали
for
идеальные
themselves.
носители,
And when they do,
когда они это сделают, к
unfortunately, it
сожалению,
will not be
отвоевать
possible to
назад
win back this
в
reality
реальность
and this
и эту
planet
планету
for at least millions of years too.
не удастся, как минимум, тоже, возможно, миллионы лет.
This is a very serious one.
Ну, очень серьезно такое.
That is,
То есть
you
вот
know
если
here, but do you want to
хочется
be
домой
embodied in the
возвращаться и
form
можно
of
было
some kind of
нарабатывать
sectoid
секунду,
slave,
которого
which
он
they
будет
will use as
использовать
batteries?
батарейки.
They will
Писать
definitely
так
do
не
it.
будете.
That's what we're
Вот об
talking
этом мы
about.
говорим.
Why are we fighting all
Почему
this
мы
shit, and
сражаемся
why
с
are we
этой
denouncing it?
хуйней и к чему ее обличаем?
Because we don't
Потому что
want
не
such a
хотим
future.
такого
Well,
будущего.
it's just
Просто
not
нам
interesting.
интересно.
Well, it's not
Как
interesting.
интересно. На
It's
самом деле
actually
очень
very
страшно и
scary and
ужасно.
terrible, and I just don't want to tell. That is, these introductions of their worlds, everything is very quiet for a person there.
Совсем для человека все очень кисло.
Aaron von Karstenberg, 139 rubles and 50 kopecks. Mr. and Magi, by social Darwinism, I meant the idea of the prosperity of the strong and the marriage of the weak. Let everything beautiful, smart and strong set, and the weak die. Push the falling one. Of the implemented in practice, the closest ideology of the times of colonialism and the Third Reich, philosophy doesn't stand a chance. Somehow you understand there is no chance in a peculiar way, and imagine in a very peculiar way what actually happened in the Third Reich. Will it be as usual to guard the watchman, who will decide who is strong here, in what parameters, in what area? Why should the weak be called? Why, for example, should they not be left to themselves? This is the third Re. It was a classic scoop. He just didn't have time to show himself in all his karasa, although he tried his best. And there the problem is that the real political practice of the so-called Third Reich contradicted these scientists and racists and so on. Because from the point of view of even those racist scientists, that is, it is enough to look at Dr. Goebbels, at his Aryan language. No, but there they were just saying that there was no need to fight with the Russians. They have a Nordic component, about the same as the Germans, and maybe even a little more by a couple of percent. That is, neither of them are subhuman at all. And you see, this is the geopolitical will of Germany. That is, Germany as a state, and a third, really benefited from the annexation of these new eastern territories there. But it contradicts racism, because the Russians have about the same Noctic component as the Germans. That is, approximately the same. Therefore, what they did not like, they called these data from the key, as it were, and there the Russians were lost. Here, although it is, well, it's just politics like that. In other words, the state acts from its own logic. And these ideas are all there. There is racism and other things. They are insofar as when they are profitable, we take them for knowledge. When it is not profitable, we forget about them. That's it. And so it usually always happens. It is not necessary to think that it is only there, in this fascist Germany, in the same way in the USSR. There and in England, or there in America, anywhere, in France, the state is always hiding behind it, trying to somehow. And you know what's interesting? Social Darwinism, it happens by itself, without any human involvement, because the fittest cause the best. Because according to Darwinism, it is not the strongest, the fittest that survives, and the most adapted to certain conditions survive. There will be a scoop, the most adapted to the scoop will survive. There will be some kind of wild capitalism, such an imaginary one, in a vacuum, those who are adapted to it will survive best, and so on and so forth. And all this social Darwinism and Nietzsche's peculiar understanding. A fool, a golden thought. Only here is a nuance, that there is a system hostile to man, that makes people weaker and weaker with each generation. They, friends Aptuk, are just making such a system, in which the characters they need survive. Exactly. In other words, I think that it might be worth it to plant a separate transmission, exactly to the technology as they do it. In other words, this is how we live, it's not so difficult to come up with some methods to live better, because we all notice that our society lives a little incorrectly, absurdly, and to our own detriment. And why does it live like this? And when we understand that it is the insectoids who control this society through their agents and conduct their selection, everything falls into place. If you don't understand that these insectoids, and it is the controlling Lemurians that influence humanity, then it seems like some kind of nonsense, stupidity and all that. And if you understand that this is not nonsense, not stupidity, but this is their strategy of getting the people they need, everything falls into place. That is, yes, from our point of view, this is nonsense, stupidity, idiocy. And from their point of view, it's normal. We bring out for ourselves carriers prepared specifically for us. That's what they think. Yes, so he has. That is, it seems to us that this is nonsense naturally, and human stupidity. And it's not stupid at all. And moreover, this is inhuman stupidity. This is not superhuman stupidity, but strategy. Gentlemen magicians, and a donkey in happy is the protection of a child from a demon. The donkey is just a personal non-organ of this child. Exactly, exactly. In other words, remember when you were a child and just started playing with toys. That is, girls are probably there with dolls, boys with soldiers. This is the moment when you start playing. That is this moment. For some, he's just some kind of imaginary friend and all that. In fact, this is a variation of the human personality, so it is arranged. A human personality is a character, and a character is a game. A game in some game, a game in some play, that is, so that's it. I just don't want this. Is it possible? When we talk about the gods of chaos and the chorus of Muker, that's where we'll sort it all out in more detail. And so it's just to notice that, yes. And in fact, yes, that's exactly not an organ that has stuck to the human game. In the same way, we can say that the same non-organ is Orcus, and there is Mitro or Cybele there or there. That is exactly the same character. They are exactly at the same level of perception, where there is exactly this humanity. And Guy is talking about humanity. That is, we just have to understand that there is real humanity here, and there are these pests here. Yes, they have influenced humanity for a long time, and almost everyone has already forgotten what real people are, having turned into their puppets and slaves, but we still remind you. Even if we lose, but we'll still, so to speak, give them the heat here. And maybe we will win more. So let's at least fight. So, I'll read the donation off topic, and then move on to the chat, but it's 139 rubles and 50 kopecks. Good evening, Mr. and Meiji. I understand that in the top, but tell me where in the streams you touch on the issues of luck. Thank you. I think we have closed all these streams. In other words, we had one open stream, but we closed it for certain magical reasons. Yes, the magical reasons are very simple. When you talk about this topic, failure begins. That is, in all such practices related to luck, that is, it is better to keep quiet about them. Here. Excuse me, in a whisper in the ear under the blanket, it is necessary to tell. Join the Gigali movement. We have all these streams preserved there. Gentlemen magicians, and the possessed parents who torment children, are they also unconscious servants of the cult of Mitra and Cybele? Exactly, that's a very good question. This cult, and similar cults, it is the technology itself that is so arranged that first we torture someone, turn him into a zombie, and then he begins to do the same with others, adding these very zombies. That is, a zombie bites someone, he dies and turns into a zombie. Is this exactly what all these artists are trying to portray from the unconscious in films about the zombie apocalypse? I constantly observe this. Some kind of mothers treat their children, especially mothers. It shows exactly what, well, this cult. They transmit and transmit their obsession. Yes, Gentlemen Magicians, is the Master movie about Scientologists? Probably yes, 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 it is the Master, the master. Aha. Clouds. Yes, now. Gentlemen, magic, but for what? So the chat jumped again. It's just that the chat is jumping. It's difficult to manage. Gentlemen, magic. What is the purpose of the ritual with milk and Soviet children in the film Mary Poppins, on which Nestor did the analysis? And all this analysis of Nestor is just some kind of copy-paste from the internet, almost from Two Who's. And Nestor just hyped. And then someone wrote it. He was either kidding or fucked up. Well, this is all the same, it's a cop sect. That is, it's just that Nestor is like this. Maybe he took it seriously. And I want to say that the cop is very like that. They have sensible ideas there, but there is a lot of nonsense. And moreover, why do I treat them with great skepticism? Because they considered the same Putin there, almost for this very one who would fight. The God Emperor. Well, and all that kind of bullshit. Here, they have sober thoughts, but in short, there is a lot of heresy. And this is the movie that you have already hesitated to throw us all sorts of links. I forgot what it's called. About what? Well, in short, fuck, I forgot. Well, this is a classic one too, some kind of Kebabski movie there. Here. Well, you see, to reason and talk about what a cop is right or wrong is a very big such and such a difficult task. It is as difficult as Duggan to discuss seriously what he is right about. It's going to have to listen to him, and this is the one for. There are a lot of Coptic books there. How many books have I written? I mean, you know, maybe we would be ready, but fuck, why do we need it? That is. What the fuck is it necessary? In other words, it is you who are interested in this kind of task, and the rest of our listeners are not interested in all these little things at all. Here, and we could, but why do we need it? We know that they are actually provocateurs. Well, it's obvious to us. Here, if it's not obvious to you, then something to do. Gentlemen, believe me. Take our word for it. Take our word for it that the Kobovites, Kurginian, and Duggan are all provocateurs. They don't wish you anything good. Gentlemen magicians, Sobchak is waiting for the fate of an ant from a vampire to replace Pugacheva's head. You. So far, her heiress is Ksenia for now. Yes, yes. What is strange is that Pugachika is still alive. Who knows if she's really alive at all? And maybe not really alive anymore. Gentlemen magic, the prince of this world is the one described by Klimev. The prince of this world is the one described in the gospel. Gentlemen magicians is the Kiklop from Pelivan Kuklichev. A little bit, yes. That is in the Cyclops there, you know, this is really worth discussing. That is, well, again, this is such a difficult task. That is, Pelivan describes everything there from his very own perspective, but from our side, everything looks a little different. But partly yes, partly yes. That is, especially when the world is described there as a flat world, which is formed by the will to death and the will to life. That is, this is martida, libido. And here are all these subtleties. Then yes, that is about, probably, so here they are. The problem is that Pelivan, from his point of view, does not see much difference between Lemurians, insectoids, and the god Thoth, for example. But again, it makes sense to talk about this after, only when we finally explain the chaos hangers-on about each god of chaos separately. That is, all these subtleties. And then, we will explain that yes, this is Pelivan's heresy in what? Now we just don't have the strength to do it. It's just that you sort of remember that here we believe that Pelivan said heresy. Here, and why he said heresy, we can't explain to you yet, we don't have enough strength. Be sure to stop explaining. By the way, we notice in the chat, gentlemen magicians, Orcus is the Roman god of death. Well, okay, yes. Gentlemen magicians, can you tell us your opinion about adrenochrome? Does this substance exist, or is it another shiz for conspiracy theorists? This substance exists quite well. It has been used in medicine. Now, well, it is almost not used, because there are more modern drugs. It's been synthesized quite a lot since the 60s, and this cartoon about the fact that adrenochrome is some kind of super drug was launched by Hunter Thompson in his book about fear and disgust in Las Vegas. And from my point of view, this whole public discussion about the fact that kids are being killed and fucked by the authorities in order to get this adrenochrome from them, which is supposedly a fucked up drug, is another clearing of the clearing. That is, they kill, eat, and fuck, but not for the sake of adrenochrome. By the way, Palavin had this one of the last books about Saturn. I was just explaining why children are sacrificed to Saturn. Because they have the maximum potential. It is precisely this potential that brings sacrifice to these evil gods. Not exactly Saturn, because from our point of view, Saturn is just a zombie, but unfortunately it is not independent. Here. That's what I was talking about at the very beginning of our broadcast, that their children seem to have a very weak tone. Here, they have a lot of potential strength, but little protection. That is, they are most vulnerable to some rituals, or rather, where, due to more fear and horror, you can pump out maximum energy. Here, this is what children are used for, because they have a weak tone, and they have a lot of potential strength. So, a taxi driver employee, 230 rubles. Yandex fired a taxi driver for not taking a drunk Negro. What a fucking office of shit from under the horse. I see they have started donating to promote some kind of trip on our stream. Interesting, interesting. Naively strange. Let's leave it without comment. We're just not interested. Mr. Magicians, is using the methods of zombification for your own purposes insectoid, or are all weapons good? You see, all weapons are good, but some guns have an interesting feature. It doesn't sort out where its own is, where someone else's is, and it's fucking around the squares. Like, for example, chemical weapons. Have you ever wondered why such weapons, which were considered just an achievement, were just some kind of cunt in the First World War, for the use of which everyone was preparing? Look at the same one there, for example, the Golden Calf, a characteristic moment where there were civil defense exercises, everyone was running around in gas masks. Why wasn't it used in World War II? And that's how you think we're friends, Aptuk. There, in my opinion, there was a contract. They did not apply it. So what? You never know what kind of contract there was. The contract is not serious. The fact is that the First World War, we are friends of pharmacies, was positional, and it was possible to shell these positions there, which stand there for a year, for two. And the Second World War was maneuverable. And so you bombed the squares of this chemistry today, and then you yourself go through it the next day, attack and all that sort of thing. Maybe. Here, just look, for example, it was possible, when the Germans reached the sources there, or even just reached the Volga, it was possible to poison the Volga. It would have caused huge damage to the environment. But they didn't. Example, by the way, they didn't use nuclear weapons either. Stopudovo, the Germans also had nuclear weapons already. The end of the war. Well, it was just useless. Only Figs knows him. In my opinion it is. In my opinion, all these absurdities are explained by the fact that it was just necessary to sacrifice more people, that's all. Therefore, the Germans had to walk around them up to certain forces, so that there were as many of them as possible. Well, and then, as if naturally, they were not allowed to walk there much. Here, in other words, everything was controlled in order to sacrifice more Lusiks. That's just how I am. Well, I started it all. Played what? Chemistry, yes. To the use of zombification too. This is a very unpleasant weapon, frankly speaking, which will also hit the one who uses it. So, we have another donation, but it's 139 rubles and 50 kopecks. Mr. and Magi, if you can have one more off-top question. Previously, I often fell into lucid dreams, immediately turning into sleep paralysis, with glitches about the attack of demons and other evil spirits. What makes you think it was glitches? Once I hugged such a person, and absorbed it into myself. This may have some consequences. Of course it's possible, and the consequences can be very different. It can get you hooked, for example, or take away more of your personal strength. In general, that's what you really shouldn't do when communicating with various non-organs. It's hugging them, and getting into some kind of physical close contact. Gentlemen magicians, Max Metasmally has been talking about a cult for a long time, plus Pizzagate in the USA, when some manipulations with the children of all sorts of prominent Democrats were revealed. There's something I can't hear you like shit. Speak up or something. I don't hear what you're saying at all. Wait, this. I'm going to check the settings now. And I can't check the settings without changing the picture. Can you hear me right now? Not really, not really. Very strange. I have no settings. I understand what you're saying, but it seems that somehow this is the very thing. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, wait a minute. And now, it seems better now. Tell me something else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A bunny came out. Better, better. And before that it was like this. Interestingly, I didn't change any settings, just reconnected the microphone. So, what exactly did you listen to about Meta Thoughts and Pizzagate in the USA? Yes, yes. I listened to that. Gentlemen magicians, Max Metasmally has been talking about the cult for a long time, plus Pizzagate USA, when some manipulations with the children of all sorts of prominent Democrats were revealed. Well, just this whole story with adrenochrome is the same thing, so this topic will be as chatty as possible. And this whole Pizzagate is. I don't know. I can't, in short, comment in any way. Distractions to hide real crimes, with obviously absurd accusations. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's exactly what modern power is based on. It is she who keeps on compromising material, which is associated at least with sex, as a maximum with cannibalism and fucking children, then their subsequent devouring. Something like that. Gentlemen magicians, yes, yes, yes. No, I'm still going on. Gentlemen magicians, I once read that people of antiquity had a more developed brain, the volume was larger, and then sharply decreased in size. Do you think it was some kind of malicious strike? I just think so. Moreover, according to the same official science, the further, the more the volume of the human brain decreases. And the same Neanderthals had it much more than modern humans. I was also thinking about this topic very much, and it would be interesting for me to read a story like this, where let's say there 40,000 years ago, exactly when the Neolithic was just ending, that some shaman got into our time. I imagine how quickly he will seize world power. That is, for him, the vulnerability will only be to understand, decipher some of our meanings, and then, his intelligence will simply be enough to capture everything very easily and quickly. In other words, I understand perfectly well that in a degraded society, it is those original people who can very easily orient themselves and seize power. That would be interesting for some kind of story like this, but it is impossible to write this story if they do not contact with such a mind, for example, like this. Yes. In other words, it's impossible to come up with. We just need to throw away this civilization that has influenced us for so long, and it is impossible to do this from within ourselves. Well, here's some idea. It seems funny to me. You can see this, for example. Gentlemen magicians, shouldn't you retire from all social networks and stop watching YouTube in order to disconnect from insectoids and puppeteers and devote time to practice, making an exception except for your streams? It's up to you to decide whether you should apply this practice or not, but the practice is quite working, by the way. We have repeatedly advised this, by the way. Well, do not disconnect from social networks, but stop reading various supposedly news that has long been not news, but pure disinformation and propaganda. The fact is that I haven't been reading this shit for a long time, but just automatically, when you go to Yandex there, for example, I'm some kind of crazy just there. Then, some fucking Yandex Zen. That is, what I dream there is some kind of game. So blatant game. I made a choice for myself. I consider it as hers. On Facebook it is. More booze out there somewhere. That's it. The silence factor? Yes, yes. I made a choice for myself. That is, instead of a TV, instead of Yandex Zen, I am the source of information for me, is the group of silent sector. That's it. Of course, there's all sorts of game, but here, it is no different from what is shown on the news. I'd rather watch it with this kind of processing. But it's 270 rubles, 279 rubles 1 kopeck. Mr. and Magi, thank you very much for the answer. That's what I was afraid of. Personal power has become much less somewhere since that period. Can you tell me what to do with it? How to resettle them? Where to dig? According to the script, thank you again for the answer, and for your activity. Well, how to engage in stalking, tracking down where this non-organ has settled in your head, and slowly pick it out. But a long, systematic work is no longer possible. Yes, you don't think that we are going to do some kind of magic like this. We will do magic, of course, but for now, our magic is enough for, approximately, meditation. It does not partially drive away organs. By the way, it is already driving away. In the future, when our Gregor gets stronger, he will still be better. Do not drive away the organs. But without your inner work, it's all like it's lard. It will work in the middle for half. But if you combine it all, it will work well. What is needed is discipline, disciplined practice. It's difficult for me, but what can I do? What can I do? Need to. Otherwise, these same ones. Don't you want to be a golem? Here. Gentlemen magicians, what do you think? If there are those on the stage who oppose Pugacheva and at the same time are not a pest. I listened to the Arya group in my youth. Many of their songs have similar ideas to your Matrix side, for example. But I immediately remembered Jigurdur. Jigurdur, of course, is such a funny character, but let's note that he is the only one of these faggots who openly spoke out against this coronavirus. That is, he spoke before that. Well, that is such a person. It's inevitable to play the clown with this. That is, like this, like a clown for faggots. That is, here is a Jigurda exactly of clowns of faggots. But in this root situation, it's related to the coronavirus. He damn honestly said that it was all bullshit. Well done. That's all. In my opinion, except for Jigurda, no one there spoke more or less dishonestly about this. Well, maybe someone has spoken out, but it's just that these people are not on the stage. Now, thanks to the development of information technology somewhere in the south. No, they sit and stuff. So no, we were talking about the stage. The fact is that. Now I'm going to try to explain. Look, everything is captured there by some mafia. You can't help but get out. You're pretending to be a clown's name, so that they just notice that you're a fucking moron clown. Otherwise, there's no way, otherwise they won't notice you in any way. In other words, they won't write anything about you, they won't say anything about you. You have to constantly portray yourself as a clown to be on TV. Yes, that's why some citizens have to fuck dogs repeatedly. Well, yes, and that includes this. Gentlemen magicians, I heard on YouTube that child abuse is something like a golemization ritual. Severe stress, the horror of violence, as it were, frighten the animal structures of the brain, they close, lock, in order to survive. Well, there is quite such a technology. That's exactly what I started the stream with, but it is their rituals with children that are not carried out for this. Gentlemen magicians, are you familiar with the works of Meneghetti? He is just a representative of the backstage, apparently of a low level, but he merges something interesting in the books, including a device built into the brain. The main nonsense is that Putin is fighting for the motherland among his enemies. So that's another point. No, I am not familiar with the works of this Meneghetti. Similarly, so, in a minute. So, I'm probably going to go to the clearing now, too. Come on. We're back on the air. Let's be friends, Aptuk, slowly wrap up, because we have already been streaming for almost 2 hours, and I don't see any particularly interesting questions. Here, for example, gentlemen magicians, the gematorium is a suitable tool for understanding the language of puppeteers. I'm not familiar with gematria at all. There's nothing to add either. So, the beam is 139 rubles and 50 kopecks. Gentlemen magicians, is alcohol a zombie agent, and why, having a strong narcotic influence, is on free sale? As if all the poison, and all the medicine, and alcohol can be used, including for zombification. And it can also be used to protect against zombification. And it is on free sale, because the hands are too short to forbid, they could have banned it. We tried, by the way, repeatedly, nothing good came of it. Do you have anything to add? We are friends with Aptuk. No, I had some idea, I lost it somehow. About this whole situation there with Pugachev. And somehow I'm surprised that it's exactly on this topic that I somehow have questions somehow. And Nick, it seems early that everyone understands all this. I don't believe it, that everyone understands everything. However, it is actually very difficult. In other words, she explains exactly how the real behind the scenes work. That is, it's not for nothing that we have such a name. How the real backstage works. Okay, we're friends with Aptuk. Let's probably wrap it up slowly then, because it's late. Personally, I'm already tired. Well, what the fuck, Malyet, bye-bye. Га.
Гай-гая.
Га.
Гай огой.